Thank you, Terry. Everybody has received or should have received a written introduction of Mark LeBlanc, CSP. But let me just simply add a couple of things. I first met Mark in 1982. He was 21 years old at that time. And little did I know then, we would develop an extraordinary friendship and relationship for the next 39 years, and hopefully more. There are many things that I've always admired about Mark, but basically I can simply say this: he is the consummate caring professional. He's knowledgeable. He serves businesses and organizations around the map. His achiever circle is sought out by many, many people. But most important of all, Mark has a caring heart. And he's not only knowledgeable, but he cares. And he has gifted with grants, 19 grants of $3,000 apiece to up and coming young entrepreneurs. In addition, he walks his talk. He has walked the Camino, the 500-mile Camino, 3 times, and is working on planning for the 4th. And I should tell you that he's a lifetime member of the International Listening Association. And so I invite you to sit back and listen carefully, because you're in for a treat. And I'll listen to the recording later, but I have to go back to a board meeting. Cheers to all. God bless. Get him hard, Mark.
Thank you very much, Manny.
Past performance is not an indicator of future results. Past performance is not an indicator of future results. We're familiar with that expression or that saying or that quote from the financial services world. Let me suggest to you what is an indicator of future results. Today's performance is an indicator of future results. The decisions that you make and the steps that you take today and each and every day will ultimately take you where you want to go, or they won't. My hope today is to maybe hold up a mirror to those of you that are doing and have done incredibly well over the course of your career, and maybe hold up a mirror to some of you who might want to look in the mirror and maybe make a change or two. In fact, one of the pearls of wisdom that I love to share is no change, no change. You might want to jot that one down. In fact, every once in a while, I say something good. I'm not quite sure where it comes from, but I think that's a good one. I would jot that one down. No change, no change. I've been a fan and a follower of the Optimist creed for virtually that entire 39 years, 40 years of being in business for myself. Just a moment about me. I have been on my own virtually my entire adult life. I had a job once for about 6 months, and I found out at a very early age that I was unemployable. After 6 months, and at the age of 21, I was inspired by the 2 words, "You're fired." And I made a vow at 21 that I would do whatever it would take to make it on my own. And I have. And this year I will celebrate my 39th year of being in business for myself. It has not always been easy. I've had some good years. I've had some bad years. I've had some great years. And I've had a few ugly years that I would just as soon leave in the rear view mirror. In fact, Kurt was so kind to talk about forgetting the mistakes of the past. And sometimes we need to look in the rear view mirror. And I want to just talk for a moment about commitment. Because if I know one thing about optimists everywhere across this land, you are not only committed in your life, but you are committed in your work. Now, I want to just ask a hard question, because we tend to be much better at making and keeping commitments to others. We're very good, or we're much better at making and keeping commitments to our community, the Chamber of Commerce, the Optimist chapter that you are a part of, our place of worship, our family, our friends, our loved ones, our clients, and our prospects. We tend to score high on making and keeping commitments to others. We are not always so great at making and keeping commitments to ourselves. I want you to think about the last time you made a commitment to yourself. Did you keep it? And just maybe it was a commitment that you had made more than once. So many of us have made what I call the New Year's Great Resolution to save more money, to reduce our debt, to write that book, to increase our sales, to grow our business, to lose that last 10 pounds. History suggests that on average, New Year's resolutions tend to last about 5 days. And within 4, 5, 6 days, we are back to the same or similar attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors that we had heading into the holidays or previously in the year. If I could wave a magic wand today, it would be to christen you with a deeper sense of rigor and resolve, and look towards helping you or supporting you or encouraging you to do more of what you want to do. In fact, the second most difficult question for people to answer, is, what do you want? Or as my friend David Goldman from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, wrote a book, and the subtitle was, "What Do You Really Want?" Now, some of you may be familiar with the Jesuit Retreat Center just outside of Stillwater, de Montreville, and I've been going to the Jesuit retreat centers in Manresa, down in Louisiana, as well as Stillwater for some 20 years. I probably have hit maybe 16 or 17 of the last 20 years. And it was August 29th of 2012, I was on retreat. And I don't remember it being one of the exercises or one of the meditations or instructions that we were to reflect on, but I started to wrestle with this question, what do you want? And during a moment of reflection or a period of reflection, I wrote down 10 specific things that I wanted in my life and in my work and in my faith. It was different than a goal setting exercise. In fact, I would never set a goal without creating a foundation for that goal. In fact, if you have some commitments or some goals that you've been wrestling with or struggling with, I want to just give you a little different twist or a little different frame on goal setting. No matter what it is you want, no matter where you are in the season of your life and work, that you begin to look at what I think is the reason so many New Year's resolutions are broken by the 5th day of the year. I asked a question once. I said to an audience, I said, how long do New Year's resolutions typically last? And people shouted out a number of answers, 2 weeks, 5 days, a month. And I had one person say, oh, Mark, that's easy. Until my next meal. Now, I don't know what it is about New Year's resolutions, but my thought is, or my perspective is, that we seldom lay down a foundation for that goal or that resolution to stick. And so whenever I set a goal today, I make sure that it has a foundation that is comprised of not only the goal or the top of the mountain, but having certain milestones on the way to that goal. In fact, you're familiar, most of you might be familiar with the infomercial from many years ago. I think it was Ron Popeil who said, set it and forget it. I would suggest to you that you set your goal, forget it, but focus on the next milestone or the next level in achieving that goal. Sometimes the commitment, sometimes the resolution, sometimes the vision is so grand that at first sight of breaking that commitment, we tend to set it aside. But if all of a sudden you're focused on the next milestone and you create a benchmark or a set of benchmarks. In fact, I want you to think in terms of goals, milestones, benchmarks, and standards. Goals, benchmarks, milestones, and standards. Think of the goal as the top of the mountain, a milestone as the next level on the way to the top of that mountain. A benchmark is just a number that measures an activity or a result. A benchmark is just a number that measures an activity or a result. But standards are the key to making anything happen when it comes to goals, vision, resolutions. I would suggest that if there was one single takeaway from this presentation today, my thought for you or my encouragement to you would be raise your standards. Raise your standards on what you not only expect from yourself, but raise your standards on what you demand of yourself. No change, no change. Imagine what could happen if we could look in the rearview mirror and maybe call back some of the commitments that have been important to us over the course of time, and for whatever reason, we let them go and we never got back to them. You have the recipe, you have the ingredients, you have everything that you need in order to make something great happen in your life or your work. In fact, I want you to think about your potential from maybe another angle or another perspective. In fact, one of the greatest desires in our world is the desire to make a difference in the life or work or career of another person. And I want you to think about your potential. And I don't know how you define potential in your life or your work or your family. But I want you to think about potential as simply your gift to the world. But imagine what could happen if you left your potential inside the box. My father just celebrated his 25th anniversary of life. He had a massive stroke at the age of 61. And he's in a nursing home today. And my dad is undoubtedly one of my best, if not my best friends. In fact, I have called my dad nearly every single day since his stroke. It is one of my benchmarks. It is one of my standards. Now, today he's in a nursing home. It has not been easy. His short-term memory is failing a bit. His long-term memory is astounding. So I never ask him what he had for dinner tonight or what he's looking forward to, but I always bring up the Minnesota Twins of the 60s and the 70s. I always bring up the amazing fishing trips that he took me on as a little boy when we were living in Columbia Heights, Minnesota. We moved to northern Minnesota when I was 10 years old, small town, fertile Minnesota, population 816. And my dad is, sometimes they say people are a piece of work. My dad, he's a piece of art. But I'll never forget, about 30 days before my dad had a stroke, at the age of 61, he called me and he said, you know, Mark, I do not believe that I have ever really reached my potential. Oh, I've had my ups and downs, some good years and some bad years. But he said, about the only great thing that your mother and I have accomplished is that we've raised 4 great kids. And then he said, well, maybe 3, and you. And a month later, he had a career-ending stroke, was not expected to live 3 days. And just this past March 17th, we celebrated the 25th anniversary of his life. And I'm grateful every single day for the gift of his life and the fact that I still have the opportunity to call him, and that he has the opportunity to pick up the phone, the flip phone, and make a call to me. But what do you want? What matters most to you? Imagine what could happen if you developed a little different rigor, a little different resolve around what mattered most, or what matters most to you. It's true. It's true. In 2008, I went on a short 500-mile walk across Spain. It's called the Camino de Santiago. It's one of the 3 great pilgrimages of the world: Rome, Jerusalem, and Santiago in northern Spain. I had never heard of the Camino, even in my walk of faith over the course of time. I'd never even heard of it. And one night, a gentleman, a friend of my brother John's, we sat at a kitchen table, and he shared the story of how he had retired from teaching, and his retirement gift to himself was to walk the Camino. And the day after he retired, he flew to Spain, and he had not trained at all. Only after one day, his feet were bruised and blistered so badly that he taped his feet up with duct tape and he walked the rest of the 500 miles. And as I sat at that kitchen table and I thought about this story and Jim was sharing this, I could not wrap my arms around what this was or why somebody would even consider doing it. And that was October of 2006. And for the next approximately 2 months, it gnawed at me. Just like some of the things that you want in your life and work gnaw at you. And I want to introduce you to a little different phrase or twist or perspective. And I want you to jot these 2 words down. And the 2 words are inspired friction. Inspired friction. Where might you have some inspired friction gnawing at you? Maybe it's a secret dream. Maybe it's a commitment you've made to yourself repeatedly, but yet you didn't quite have the rigor. You didn't quite have the resolve to hang in there. And pretty soon you set it aside because you had other things, commitments and responsibilities that maybe you felt were more important. After about 2 months of letting that gnaw at me, I woke up one morning and I thought, I'm going on that walk. That was about the middle of December 2006. And at the time, I happened to be serving as the vice president of the National Speakers Association. At that time, a group of 3,600 speakers and no listeners. And I knew that my volunteer commitments were so great that there was no way that I could carve out 5 weeks or so to go to Spain and go on this walk. But I looked out in my calendar and I knew when our convention would be. It would be in early August of 2008. And I added maybe about 30 days and I inked it in my calendar. And for the first time in my life, I understood the importance of having something on your calendar that you can look forward to. But never did I imagine what this walk would entail. For 2 years, it was a romantic stroll through Spain. The 2 years went by. I finished my term of service, vice president, president-elect, president. We had an amazing convention experience in August of 2008 at the New York Marriott Marquis with approximately 2,100 professional speakers. And it was amazing. And for the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to be and to feel like I was burned out. And I thought that I would just come back to Minneapolis after our convention in early August and rest up for a few days, maybe a long weekend, maybe take a week off. And I had nothing. I don't know if any of you have felt like you were on empty or that you were on fumes at any point or period in your life, but it didn't go away. And 30 days later, I still was operating on fumes. I told my coaching clients, I said, just let me get out of here. And I did something I always wanted to do, but never quite had the courage to do it. I shaved my head shiny bald. I'd always wanted to shave my head shiny bald. And I shaved my head shiny bald, and I put a backpack on really for the first time in my life. I've been a walker, but never a trucker, never a camper, never a backpack. Now for 2 years, I had been studying and preparing for this walk, and I knew what all of the recommendations were. But the morning I was to fly to Paris, France, to begin my journey, it was as if my brain went out my ear. There are no stores in Spain. And that morning, when I was doing my final packing, I started grabbing things from everywhere, just on the off chance that they would not be available for the next 30 or 35 days. I shudder to think, and am somewhat embarrassed. I'm not even going to share with you the extra things that I took. In fact, my backpack was so full that when I got to the airport in Minneapolis, when I was dropped off and I had my trekking poles and I had my 2 full backpack, I thought, oh, I've got the answer. I went into the luggage store at the Minneapolis airport and bought a mid-sized backpack, and I figured that could help with the overflow. And by the time I got to Spain, I'd figure out a way to tie that medium-sized backpack onto the already heaping backpack. What could possibly go wrong? Let me suggest to you that when you are on fumes or burned out, that is not the best time to begin a 500-mile journey. I shaved my head shiny bald. I had these 2 backpacks. I flew to Paris, France. I took a train down to a little village in southern France called Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. It's the most popular starting point of the Camino de Santiago. People have been walking the Camino for over 1,000 years. And most begin in the little village of Saint Jean. I got to Saint Jean, and the next day began my walk. I figured out a way to fasten that second backpack onto my original backpack. And I began to walk. And I walked. And I walked. And I walked. And I don't even think I had gone 2 miles, and I thought I was going to die. The Camino doesn't break you in gently. In fact, you are not even leaving the village of Saint Jean, and you're already starting to ascend Mount Lepideur in the Pyrenees. In fact, day 1 of the Camino is physically the most taxing. You are up and over Mount Lepideur and down into Spain, into a little village called Roseville. I began to think after just 2 miles, if people have been walking the Camino and this route, this path, for over 1,000 years, if I was a farmer along this way, I'd set up a booth, I'd set up a bench, I'd serve lemonade or iced tea, for God's sake. And you know, I hadn't gone another 100 yards or so around a bend, and there was a bench alongside the road. Oh, and it was raining on day 1. And I couldn't believe that I had needed to even stop for a rest break after 2 lousy miles. I was in pretty good shape. I was a champion wrestler in high school from northern Minnesota. I knew what it meant to train, but nothing prepared me for a 500-mile walk. And the bench was set back a little bit from the road, almost as if it was in the ditch. And I remember taking my medium-sized backpack off, and then I took my main backpack off. It's raining. And I sit down on this bench and I look around, and it was as if I was sitting in the middle of a dump, because other people who had walked along this way had began to discard things at this bench. There were clothes. I almost decided to leave some of the extra books I had in my backpack because I thought that I could catch up on some extra reading along the way. But as I sat on that bench in the rain, I began to think about my work, and I began to think about my life, and I began to think about some of the goals that I had set for myself and reached. And then I began to think about some of the goals and ideas and plans that I had for my life or career or work or my business that were never achieved. And some of them I discarded when I was about 90% complete. Some of them I discarded when I was maybe halfway to the goal. Some of them I forgot about, and the ones that I had never even taken a step towards something that I had initially felt was important to me. I don't know how long I sat on that bench in the rain, and I hadn't started crying yet. But I sat on that bench, and pretty soon I stood up, and I put my big backpack on, and I figured out a way to attach that medium-sized backpack, and I took off. And 33 days later, and 500 miles, and over 1 million steps across northern Spain, I walked in front of the Cathedral of Santiago. It was the most grueling and the most profound experience of my life. In fact, for those of you that might be interested, you might consider renting the movie The Way, starring Martin Sheen. I'm pretty sure it's available on Netflix or Hulu or one of the platforms. But The Way, starring Martin Sheen. It's a great, it's part Hollywood story, but it's also part documentary on the Camino. And for those of you that have never heard of the Camino, or if you have heard of the Camino, consider renting The Way, starring Martin Sheen, and you will get a glimpse into what it means to go on a short 500-mile walk. But let me take you back to that very first day when I had gone up and over Mount Lapeter. And I landed in this little village called Roncesvalles. And my first night on the Camino, I was staying in a monastery that had been converted into a hostel or a refugio, a place of rest and refuge. And you had to be a registered walker of the Camino to stay in these hostels. And I walked in, and I think, if I remember right, the fee was $5 for the night. And I didn't know what to expect, but I paid my $5, and I had what they call a Camino passport that gets stamped along the way. every night and at certain locations along the way. It will eventually become, little did I know, one of the most prized possessions of my life. I paid the $5. I got my passport stamped, didn't know what to expect. And I said, well, where am I going to sleep tonight? And the woman, in her broken English, said, turn around, Mark. And I turned around, and in one room, there were 60 bunk beds. And it was full that night. Do the math. That's 120 people in one room after having walked the most difficult and physically challenging day of the Camino de Santiago. It was not only the best $5 that I ever spent, it was a symphony of sounds during the night like you can't even imagine. That night, I was having dinner with maybe about a dozen or so other walkers of the Camino. Now, I was there to do the walk in one single stretch. A lot of people from Europe will do it in stages, maybe 3 years, or they'll walk a week a year for 5 years. And that night, over dinner, I met these 3 women from England. And this was their third phase of walking the Camino. And I was visiting with them, and I asked a question. And I asked a question of one of the women. Her name happened to be Judith. I will never forget Judith. She didn't look like a hiker or a walker. Now, I didn't tell her that. That was my inner voice. Here I was, a former national wrestling champion, tough guy, had trained for the Camino. I'm dying after one day. Judith doesn't look like she's in very good shape. And I said to Judith, I said, Judith, what have you learned along the way? What piece of advice might you have for me? And Judith looked at me and she said, Mark, I've learned one thing, and that is, no matter how badly your feet are bruised and blistered and bleeding, she said, you can always take one more step. I've had the good fortune to know Manny Style for 39 years. I've had the good fortune to know Don Salverda for maybe 37 or 38 of those 39 years. I've grown up as a member of the National Speakers Association. I have listened to, I've learned from, I've had lunch with the greats of the great. Zig Ziglar, Og Mandino, my personal hero of an author. Jim Tunney, one of the great NFL referees. My favorite speaker of my career, Ira Hayes. Marilyn Vanderberg, Naomi Rhodey, Patricia Frick, Tom Winninger. Some of you know Tom Winninger, who recently passed away. Tom was so kind 21 years ago to write the foreword to my first book, Growing Your Business. He passed away in February, and we had an amazing celebration of his life service. Norman Vincent Peale, Wayne Dyer. I've heard them all. I've heard every miserable motivational quote in the history of the world. But nothing has ever inspired me more than the words of the great Judith. You can always take one more step. Hold on to that one, maybe for the rest of your life. The great Judith, you can always take one more step. My dad had called me before his stroke and said, Mark, I'm going to give the next 10 years everything that I have. And a month later was obviously forced to retire. We have no idea what tomorrow holds. The decisions you make and the steps that you take each and every day will ultimately take you where you want to go, or they won't. Hedge your bets carefully. Now, I'm not able to see many of you, and I know that we have a variety of people from all walks of life, members and guests at different stages. In fact, Camino is just Spanish for the path or the way. And the great mantra of the Camino is Buen Camino. You will probably say that and hear that maybe only a gazillion times over the course of 500 miles. Buen Camino. It means good way, or have a good way, or have a good path. Much like we say, have a good day. I do not know where you are at on the Camino of your life or the Camino of your work. But I do know that one of the things that burns inside of us is this notion or need or desire for things to happen faster. Whether it's growing your business, whether it's improving your sales, whether it's losing weight, whether it's saving more for retirement, whether it's reducing your debt. We just want to wave a magic wand or have someone wave a magic wand and take that away or make it happen sooner rather than later, whatever the time frame is. If you would like to accelerate and make something great happen in your life or your work, I want you to adopt and adapt what I call the storm starter strategy. I want you to start your storm in the direction of your dream, however you define it. Let's start the storm. I want you, and I'm serious, I want you to hold up one finger, and I know that you're on mute, but I also know that you're optimist and you like to play the game and you listen well to speakers every 30 days and you follow their instructions. So I'm encouraged by the fact that I have an audience today that is sharper and brighter than most. Please hold up one finger and repeat after me. Make one business development call a day. One a day, one a day, one a day. Just like my vitamins. One a day, one a day, one a day. Give yourself and each other a virtual Zoom muted standing ovation and round of applause. Let's see some hearts or thumbs up from the reaction box. That's it, Mark. That's it. That's all I've got to do is make one call a day. That's it, baby. That's it. Now, some of you might adapt that to one email a day. Some of you might adapt that to one compliment a day. But whether it is your business, your sales, your life. What matters the most to you? Start the storm and start the process of sometimes I refer to it as planting one seed a day. One a day, one a day, one a day, just like your vitamins. Now, here's the rub. Here's the rub. You'd never take a week's worth of vitamins in advance of a vacation. Or you'd never go on vacation and say, oh my gosh, I forgot to bring our vitamins on vacation. You'd never go back home, open up the cupboard door and take 2 weeks worth of vitamins to catch up from what you did not do. I want you to get ready to write something down because this is the most important thing you will ever hear come from my lips. The most important thing is no plus or minus carryover. No plus or minus carryover. In fact, that alone will help you recognize and let go of the mistakes of the past as you press on to the greater achievements of the future. I refer to it as resetting your counters to 0 every 24 hours. If you plant one seed on Monday, great. Reset your counters to 0, you plant another one on Tuesday. If you skip Wednesday for whatever reason, great. Reset your counters, plant one seed on Thursday. If you feel great one day and you make an extra 2 or 3 or 4 telephone calls, whatever that benchmark is, great. Reset your counters to 0 and you plant 1 the next day. 1 a day, 1 a day, 1 a day, just like your vitamins. I plant one seed every day. I like the phone. I think it's the new social media tool of the future. But whether it is making one post a day, making one call, planting one seed, sending an email, little did I know that making one telephone call a day to my dad was starting the storm on the greatest relationship of my life. The second most difficult question for people to answer is, what do you want? In fact, when I was back on my retreat at de Montreville on August 29th of 2012, I sat down and I wrote out 10 things that I wanted in the next 10 years. It was different than a goal-setting exercise. It was really connecting me to what mattered the most. I wrote those 10 wants in the next 10 years. I dated and signed it, and I dubbed it my ultimate lighthouse. And in the last now almost 9 years, my ultimate lighthouse has kept me on the straight and narrow. 5 of those original 10 wants were achieved. And I've refreshed the list of 10 wants. What do you want in your life and work? Imagine what could happen if you created your own ultimate lighthouse. In fact, I would encourage you in the next 30 days, or for some of you, high achievers, maybe the next 3 days, or if you're an overachiever, maybe the next 3 hours. It doesn't take all that long to make a list of the 10 most important things in your life or work or career that matter to you the most, that have been gnawing at you maybe for years, that you've set aside, and maybe it's time to call them back. It is never too late to reset your counters to 0 and create a right turn in the direction of your dream. And I don't know if you care to, but if you want to snap a photo of this screen, there are 365 days in a year, 365 new chances. You do not need to wait until January 1st to reset your counters to 0. You have an opportunity to reset your counters to 0 every 24 hours. And it's not going to be easy. But if you get into the habit, if you develop the mindset of resetting your counters to 0 every 24 hours, it becomes easier to reset your counters to 0 every week. If you get into the habit, if you adopt the mindset of resetting your counters to 0 every week, it becomes easier to reset your counters to 0 every 30 days. Why have one New Year's celebration a year when you can have 12? Now, if you're friends with me on Facebook, you will know that people who are LeBlanc trained in the art of growing their business, every 30 days, you will see things pop up on my Facebook wall. Happy New Year, Mark. I hit my targets for May, or I'm excited about June, and we're already now at June 11th, and somebody already texted me and said, I hit my targets. Throw away the concept of the annual goal and start to create a snapshot of a model month and create a path and a plan to be at or near your model month every 30 days. Reset your counters to 0 every 30 days, and whatever you wanted for your annual goal is much more likely to be achieved. If you set the goal, forget it, and focus on the next milestone, and you create a set or a mix of actions and activities, of strategies, of benchmarks that will help you create a foundation for your potential to emerge and to flourish. Take a deep breath and let it out. We are in the home stretch of our time together here. I would like to ask a favor. If any of you are open to sharing in the chat box, is there a phrase? Is there an idea? Is there a concept? Was there a pearl of wisdom that I've shared with you today that resonates with you? I'd love to save the chat box today, but I would love to have each and every one of you pop something in the chat box that has connected with you or inspired you or irritated you or reminded you of something you might want to get back to or need to do in order to get where you want to go. It was 2004. It was 2004. At the time, I was living in La Jolla, California. In 2004, my practice marriage came to an end after 19 years. It was a goal that I had not remembered setting. And unfortunately, at about 19 years, my marriage came to a conclusion. It was a very difficult period in my life. I was 42 years old. And when I got through the painful part of it, of course, I went back out into the marketplace and someone said to me, Mark, you need to get on Match.com. And I said, Match. What? And they said, Match.com. I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. And they said, well, that's where a lot of people, especially professionals, meet new people that they might want to date. And I'd never heard of online dating in 2004. And I went home that night, and it was about midnight, and I went online to Match.com, and I thought, oh my God, this is going to be great. I can hardly wait to get started and meet more dates, more relationships, more marriages, was the motto and theme of Match.com. And I thought, this is going to be amazing. It was not. And for the next 8 years, and I will tell you that I was very clear that I wanted to be in a committed relationship. I wanted to get married again. I wanted to maybe have the opportunity to have a family. At that time, I was child-free, and I thought, well, miracles do happen. You just never know. Now, dating for the divorced, as some of you might be familiar with, is not an easy. That is not an easy Camino. In fact, it was terrible. I mean, I did meet and go on some nice dates that went nowhere, but by and large, it was a nightmare. In fact, I started to do stand-up comedy. I won a $100 bill in a comedy club doing 10 minutes of stand-up on dating for the divorced. My theme was women are crazy, and you are. Some are crazier than others, but you're all crazy, and men are losers. And you are, so am I. We all have a tish of loser in us. Some are bigger losers than others, but if you don't believe me, just ask your wife, just ask your girlfriend, ask your partner, do I have a tish of loser in me? And she will start laughing. Women are crazy, men are losers. I won a $100 bill. It's probably one of my, it rates right up there with going on a 500-mile walk. It's one of the great achievements of my life and my career. But I will never forget, on July 23rd of 2011, I went on the worst date in the history of the world. Not just the worst date in the history of my life, the worst date in the history of the world. Maybe the universe. No, in fact, maybe it was the worst date in the history of the galaxy. And I was so discouraged. I was so disheartened. 8 years I'd been trying to meet someone and date someone amazing and possibly get married again. And I would think, I have a lot going for me. My faith is important. I like to think I'm a good communicator. I've been a member of the lifetime member of the International Listening Association. I think I'm a good listener. My mother passed away in September during COVID, not from COVID, but from her own health challenges. My mother was my true inspiration. And my dad, to this day, continues to be my best friend. I have a good business. I've been in business for myself now for 39 years, and I have money. But no one was interested in really being in a relationship with me. I went on this terrible date. I was so discouraged. I went home to hide my Match.com profile, cancel my subscription, and I thought, that's it. I'm done. I'm done. I am going to be single and celibate for the rest of my life. And then I thought, well, maybe not celibate, but I'm going to be single for the rest of my life. And I went to my laptop and was going to hide my profile. And I heard the voice of the great Judith. You can always take one more step. Translation, you can always hit search one more time. And I took a deep breath. I let it out. I hit search. And lo and behold, up on the screen was this amazing woman. And my heart and my soul leapt for joy. And I thought, I am going to marry her. Now, I've been at this game for 8 years at this point, nearly 8 years, and nothing had ever worked. But I knew in that moment I was going to marry her. Now, what do you write in an email to the woman you're going to marry when she doesn't know you from Adam? And even as a professional communicator, I had nothing. I had nothing. I didn't even write hello. All I wrote was a simple question. And the question was, where have you been? And I signed my name, my full name, which is rare for men to do in online dating. But the email said, where have you been, Mark LeBlanc? And I pressed send. And this woman, her name is Anne. She got the email and said, where have you been? And it intrigued her just enough to respond and say, what do you mean, where have I been? In my life? In my work? And I wrote her back and I said, oh, I'm sorry. What I meant to say was, did you just get online today? Because I thought I knew every single woman from 5'2" to 5'10" within 30 miles of 55401 that met the majority of my criteria for a perfect date and a lifetime mate. I thought I had dated them all. And she emailed me back and she said, no, she said, I've been online for a number of months. And I wanted to tell her then that she was going to marry me, but I thought that might be a little premature. But we arranged to meet about 5 days later. And we met in Ike's bar and restaurant in downtown Minneapolis. And when she walked in, my heart and my soul leapt for joy. Some people know when they meet someone for the first time, they're going to marry them. I knew the miracle, the miracle of Anne happened when I hit search one more time. It was simply confirmed when she walked through the door. Now, it took her a little bit longer, but not that long. And 4 months later, we were engaged. And 2 years after that, we were married in the little white chapel, the historic white chapel in Golden Valley, with approximately 80 of the best people in our lives. Today, she is lovingly referred to as Sweet Anne. And I could not be happier. I thank God for Sweet Anne every single day. I tell her that I love her every single day, of course. I also say something else to her every day. It's sort of a 1-2 combination. I tell her I love her every single day, but I also will find a moment in the day to say to her, thank you for loving me. Not for anything specific, just thank you for loving me. Because some days it is not that easy. Every day, Anne and I read from a daily devotional, a paragraph or two. And every day, we pray or say a little prayer for someone specifically by name. And that daily practice has become one of the most important rituals in our morning routine. In fact, if you want to set your day up to succeed, make sure that you have a solid, a tight, and a strong morning routine that will set you up to be an achiever for that day. There's a great book, I was just introduced to it a few months ago. The book is by an author. His name is Hal Elrod, E-L-R-O-D. And Hal wrote a great book titled Miracle Morning. In fact, there's a documentary about his story and his life and the concept of miracle morning. I would encourage you to pick up a copy of the book, or again, to watch possibly the documentary on Netflix or whatever platform that Miracle Morning is currently being viewed. But through all of this, through calling my dad every day, through making one business development call a day, telling Anne I love her every day, whispering a prayer in the wind for someone by name every day, has led me to what I feel is the most extraordinary practice of a lifetime. And here it is. If you've not written down a word, this is the one you want to write down. What you do every day is more important than what you do once in a while. What you do every day is more important than what you do once in a while. When I look back and reflect on 39 years of being in business for myself, when I reflect on the 39 years of relationships that I have built over the course of time with people like Manny, with people like Don Salverda, who's been a champion and a cheerleader of mine for over 3 decades. And whenever he has heard me speak, even as a young, aspiring speaker, he always had a kind word for me. Always. You may or may not be in business today. You may be retired. That part of I'm the growing your business guy. My first book is titled Growing Your Business. It's become a little bit of an underground bestseller. But I want to share with you something I refer to as a declaration. And my declaration that I share with my business audiences around primarily North America is this. I refer to it as a 4 cornerstone part declaration. And cornerstone point number 1 is you can grow your business. Number 2, you can put more money in your pocket as a business owner. Number 3, you can get your fun meter on max. And number 4, you can have the kind of balance you want between your home and your work life. You can grow your business. You can put more money in your pocket as a business owner. You can get your fun meter on max, and you can have the kind of balance you want between your home and your work life. There's an expression that we are all familiar with, and that expression is, it's not about working hard, it's about working smart. But in all my 39-ish years, I've never had anyone define what working smart means. But here's my twist. I don't think it's about working harder. I'm not even so sure it's about working smarter. I believe it is about being deliberate and moving forward in the direction of your dream, however you define it. For wherever you are at on this, your Camino called life. Earlier, I shared with you that the second most difficult question for people to answer is, what do you want? Here's the first. The most difficult question for people to answer is, what are you willing to do in order to get more of what you want? What are you willing to do in order to get more of what you want? The decisions you make and the steps that you take each and every day will ultimately take you where you want to go, or they won't. As a parting gift, this might be an exercise or an assignment for you, Terry, to share with your members, but I created a 4-point declaration for you today. And here it is. Number 1, you can create the life you want. Number 2, you can have more impact with the people you interact with. Number 3, you can live each and every day with a greater degree of hope and optimism. And last but not least, you can make the difference you have always wanted to make. Thank you.
Mark, thank you. It's almost hard hard to even begin to say how wonderful that was. What a great group of things to think about and to work for. The walking over the mountains. I had just a snippet of that when I I walked towards Mount Everest a couple of years ago. So every step, you can take another one, no matter how badly your feet may feel, or your back, or your backpack. I would like to ask at this point if there's anyone who would like to ask a question. If you can it's tough to see everybody because we have a number of screens, but if you can use your reactions tab and raise your hand, there's a raise your hand tab there, or you can try to put it in the chat and we'll try to read those. But do we have some questions for Mark? I've got us back on the screen, and Mary Jo is right there. Mary Jo, please unmute, and we'll let you have it. Thank you.
Well, hi, Mark. I'm Mary Jo McGuire, and I agree with you that Don Salverda, I always need my Don fix because he's such a positive person, and he just inspires almost everybody on this call, I think. And so just thanks to Don Salverda for inspiring me on a daily basis. But Mark, this was a great conversation. And some of us are driven to really try to do, the best we can and all of that. And sometimes, taking that one more step is really more than we should do. Like, we should take a break once in a while. Like, we should, not say yes to that one more thing. We should, I'm working on that myself because I'm driven to do all these things. And I'm wondering, at what point do we make that commitment to ourselves to take care of ourselves? So can you just talk a little bit about that? I mean, I love the one step more. That's a great way to keep moving. But I do wonder, at what point do you take care of yourself?
Well, I think that starts today. And I'm reminded, remember, the pearl of wisdom was you can always take one more step. The pearl of wisdom is not, you can always say yes to one more thing. And I'm reminded, Mary Jo, of Warren Buffett, who said something to this effect that I've never forgotten. He said, successful people learn how to say no. And really successful people learn how to say no almost all the time. Now, we define success differently, of course, each of us on our own terms. But we have to make sure that we find that blend and balance between saying yes to others and the organizations around us, and balance that with making sure that we take care of ourselves and make and keep the commitments we have to ourselves. There's a concept called sacred selfishness. And think of it as a kettle of soup. If you take care of yourself first, there will be more soup for others. But if you're not taking care of yourself, your soup pot is going to run dry.
Thank you for that. I really, really appreciate that. Thanks.
Good. Thank you.
Trying to watch in the chat. Any other comment? There's many comments in the chat that have been posted, and we'll try to get those out to folks. Figure out how we do that. But other questions or other comments at this time?
Terry, may I make a comment?
Yes, go ahead, Mark.
I know that there are some people that maybe need to check out here at 1 o'clock. And if you have some announcements to make or parting announcements,
okay.
I promise I will stick around and answer questions for the next 10 or 20 or 30, however long people want to ask a question.
Okay, let's do that. Mark, I want to start by first, we are going to thank you so much and for being here today. We're going to have a copy of the Optimist Creed for you, and we'll get that to you. I think that as I listened to you today, the many tenets of the Creed, the one I had picked up on was think only the best and expect only the best. It's just one, but you touch on so many of them, and I just really appreciate that, and keeping us in a more optimistic frame of mind, even when those darn feet are just not doing well. Taking that one more step is so important, and I do thank you so much for that. And a few of the announcements. when we do get finished, we will have our leadership lessons learned program at 2:00 today. We will log off and come back in. Our speaker this afternoon is Monty Johnson. So we'll hear from Monty about leadership lessons learned. We are still working hard with the coalition to continue to help folks in Ramsey County who, even though the COVID is slowing down, there are still a great need for so many people within the Roseville area that have been affected by the COVID situation, whether it's been the illness or just the impact of loss of work, the fear of loss of food, and possibly the loss of their housing. So there's many, many things yet to be done. So hopefully you continue to help us there. Our next meeting will be July 9th. It'll be a Zoom call again. Our speaker will be Ron Lehman, and he'll be talking about the positive attitude and avoiding complacency. So Ron will be with us next month. Our leadership lessons person next month will be Dennis Stolop. He'll be talking about that. We have many book club people who will be meeting during various times of the month, who will be reading our books and having our book club discussions. I think it is going to be, again, a hot summer, but I really hope to see more of you as we move into July and August. We really hope that by September, we'll be back in person. We feel that the board had decided, because there's so many people going on vacation and holiday, that we will continue to meet by Zoom at least for July and August, and come September, we'll be ready to more than get back together, where we can shake hands, give long, inappropriate hugs to each other, and really get back to doing all the things that we were doing before. And again, I thank everyone for being here today. And thank you much. We will stay on. I will stay on as long as we can if you have more questions for Mark. But thank you so much. I would like to end possibly with the Optimist Creed. And I have Denny, where are you at? Is it Denny Smith? I'm Denny Smith. And Denny, if you give me a second, I will post the Optimist Creed for you to read and for us to think about. But Denny, if you could unmute yourself, and we'll do the Optimist Creed.
Okay, I'm unmuted, right?
Yes, you're unmuted. Thank you.
Okay, great. Promise yourself to be so strong that nothing can disturb your peace of mind, to talk health, happiness, and prosperity to every person you meet, to make all your friends feel that there is something in them, to look at the sunny side of everything and to make your optimism come true, to think only of the best, to work only for the best, and to expect only the best, to be just as enthusiastic about the success of others as you are about your own, to forget the mistakes of the past and press on to the greater achievements of the future, to wear a cheerful countenance at all times and give every living creature you meet a smile, to give so much time to the improvement of yourself that you have no time to criticize others, to be too large for worry, too noble for anger, too strong for fear, and too happy to permit the presence of trouble.
Thank you very much, Denny. That was great.
Thank you for the honor.
You're welcome. You're so welcome. So at this point, I will continue to hold the meeting open for those that would like to have other questions or comments. And if with that, I know that I've seen some people already left already, but do we have some other comments or questions for Mark? And if you would, you can, we're down now a little better. I got a couple of screens, but if you can raise your hand using the reactions tab in your box, then we will pop up and we can see you. And Mary Jo, you have yours up again. Why you just
do, but I'm willing to wait for someone else, but I just have one while people are thinking. I just have to ask one more.
We have a guy down here at the bottom, Mr. Daler. Steve, would you like to comment? Unmute yourself, Steve. Or maybe he's just trying to give you a hard time. Steve, got to unmute yourself.
There you go. There you go.
I yield to Steve.
Thank you. I wanted to get in there before Mary Jo again, yeah. But I just have one easy question for Mark. At what point did you dump stuff out of your backpack?
The very first night in Roseville. And I believe that I left the medium-sized backpack there after one day and got rid of some extra shirts. I got rid of the 5 books. I got rid of the Costco sized shampoo and soap. I realized that I didn't have any hair, that I was going to be fine without having the jumbo size of everything in my backpack. But then even I think when I started out, it was Steve, I think.
Yeah.
I think when I started out at about 32 pounds. And by the time I arrived in Santiago, 33 days later, I was down to 21 pounds.
And one follow-up quick, your feet, how were they at the end?
When I walked the first Camino, I had a lot of trouble with my feet. And contrary to public opinion, blisters are more a result of hydration and pace than they are shoes. And your worst fear in the beginning is, will I have a roof over my head tonight? And so for the first 10 days or so, all you're thinking about while you are in pain is, I have to get to my end of day destination as fast as I can. And so it's the first 10 days that really is the physical challenge of the Camino. And it takes about 8, 10, 12 days for your blisters to toughen up a bit. The middle 10 days of the Camino tends to be more of the mental section of the Camino, and the last 10 days are tend to be more of the emotional part or chapter of the Camino. Now, 6 years later, when I went back to walk Camino 2, I did not have that fear on Camino 2. I always knew there was going to be a roof over my head. So I was able to walk in a more relaxed way, and I took more time, I took more breaks, I drank more water, and in 500 miles on Camino 2, I did not have a single blister.
Wow.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Mary? Oh, here we go. I guess I said Jim Nucky. Jim, can you unmute yourself, please? We can't hear you. Jim, unmute yourself. Jim, we can't hear you. Can you unmute yourself, Jim? I'm asking them unmute, but he's not seeing. Jim, we cannot hear you.
He's got to put his ear hearing aid in.
Jim, can you unmute yourself?
And also, Terry, sorry to interrupt.
Go
You
ahead.
can, as a host, send a button to unmute him if you click on his picture. That might help him cue him up.
Yeah, I've done that. I know. Thank you, Suzanne.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you. Jim, if you can unmute, please. You need to unmute yourself. There he's coming. There he's coming. There you go, Jim. Thank you.
I just want to tell you how important your talk to us today was. I'm sorry, maybe previously I was not a member or something like that where I missed previous ones, but I want to tell you how common sense you can make life. And your comments about Donnie, one of my closest friends, and I have a lot of success that I've had are directly from Donnie. Thank you very much, and I will be getting your books.
Thank you, Jim.
Yep.
Trying to catch up. Other comments, other questions? Mary Jo, I think you're come back to the top of the list.
I'm
again.
happy to
Okay.
wait if someone else has one, but I have a quick one. Mark, I love Steve's questions about the El Camino, and perhaps you could do a whole session on that because I love to do it. Has Sweet Ann been with you on an El Camino, and how did she like it? Or I'm just curious.
She met me on Camino 2 in 2014 for the last 4 or 5 days. And within 1 hour of walking, she fell in love with it. And she was hoping to walk with me in 2017, but was not able to make it. And so we're keeping our fingers crossed that 2023, she'll be able to come with me for the entire walk.
Great. It's a great story. Thank you.
No,
Thank you.
no way, Mary Jo.
Steve, we got to do it. I think we got to plan for it. Steve, let's do it.
No way.
I think I'm going to plan for it. I think we got to get that out there. I'm seeing the LeBaron smiling. I'm seeing Joanne. Other people might have a comment. John, Suzanne. If you have a comment, this is a good time to, get your.
While we're waiting for another question, Suzanne, my producer, would you please pop in the chat box, Camino for Good. Camino for Good. You actually, if you don't need to go to Spain to walk the Camino, you can actually walk it now virtually and download an app of the Camino de Santiago. So if you're an avid walker now, check out Camino for Good and download the app. And then every day when you're walking a few miles or a mile or 2 or 4 miles, it will log your progress, and wherever you stop at that part of the Camino, it will show you pictures of where you are and give you some of the history. So that is a great opportunity for those of you that are already avid walkers, but maybe not able to go to Spain. You don't need to go to Spain to make a change.
Well, I know that, Mark, I had the opportunity 2 years ago to walk near up near Mount Everest. And I really, when you said you can take another step, there were times when you're on the trail and it's steep, and you got the horses and the mules that are in your way. I got knocked, not off the mountain, but not knocked down. It is just as you said, those first few days, you're like, I don't know if I'm going to make it. And then you get into a better spot. And then at the end, it really gets to be a sweet spot where you're really enjoying the views and the weather and the people that are around you. The food tastes better. Everything gets better as you move into it. And sometimes you're just wondering, am I going to be able to do this? And you really can. It's just one step at a time. I love that. I love that comment. I see we have another question from John. John, unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, thanks, Mark, for all the insights today. I guess I had a question around, do you have a mission statement that you have for yourself? And if you do, how often do you update that? And where did you start in kind of creating that focus?
Thank you, and that's a great question. I have a mission statement. I have a vision statement. I have a theme or slogan or tagline. And I also have what we call a defining statement. 4 specifically different tools. My first business from 21 to 31 was a creative graphics printing and mailing company. And I built that as a young entrepreneur and sold that business in 1992 to speak full time. And I sat down and wrote a mission statement. I didn't really know what I was doing in terms of crafting a mission statement, but I wrote a paragraph, and it has stood the test of time. I've not changed it a single word.
Interesting.
And what are they? Oh, are you going to give them to you? What are they?
What, I don't have my mission statement printed in front of me. I've turned my office into a home virtual video studio, so I don't have it, but handy. My vision statement was one line, and that is to become the small business success resource of the world. I'm incredibly committed to entrepreneurship, now especially young entrepreneurs. A banker gave me a $3,000 loan when I was 22, and I used it to launch my dream of becoming a professional speaker. And so I started a foundation to give $3,000 grants to entrepreneurs under 30. My slogan or tagline is, when you are the business, which will be the title of my next business book. And my defining statement, that one sentence answer to the question, what do you do, is I work with people who want to start a business and small business owners who want to grow their business. And my sliver of the world has been in professional services with independent and practice professionals. I wrote a book several years ago titled Defining You, How Smart Professionals Craft the Answers to Who Are You, What Do You Do, and How Can You Help Me? And that book has been very well received in terms of both verbal and in writing the answers to the critical questions that are on a prospect's mind. Anybody else?
Anybody else that would like to?
Just a reminder, I hope that you will save the chat and print it out on your home or office computer. I know I'm looking forward to seeing the comments and what struck people the most during my presentation.
Mark, just one quick thing. I mean, there's so many good things. I have 2 pages of notes here, but
hey, Denny, I know your voice.
I know it is so great to see you, but the thing, and you've known me for a long time, you know, you've been all over the place and you know, trying to do too much, too fast, with too much sense of not urgency, but a sense of emergency. And I've been moving towards this. So your talk was just spot on for me. But of all of the things I picked up today, and I've been trying to do this successfully this week for pretty well a long time, one a day. I don't have to make 10 calls today if I make one a day, every day. So that was worth its weight in gold. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Denny. And I will share with those of you that are still with us. I mean, we all want to grab our momentum. You know, we all know what it's like to have a great year or a great quarter or a great month, or where we feel like we are on a roll. We feel like we have that momentum ball turning. And when I came back from Camino 2 in 2014, part of what I learned on that, my Camino 1, I learned about commitment, setting a goal to walk 500 miles and preparing for and reaching that goal. Camino 2 was about pace. It was about consistency. And when I came back in the fall of 2014, I adopted a second gear pace. I never shifted into neutral, nor did I ever kick it into a high gear. I just was like that Energizer bunny that just kept going at a slower or moderate pace, I just never stopped. So even if you're moving like a turtle and you don't stop, you can get anywhere you want to go. Camino 3, the big takeaway was about resolve. To do the work whether you feel like it or not. That's a whole nother speech. I may have to come back, Terry, in a year or two and give you
Yes.
that one. But Denny, always good to not only see you but hear you, Denny. You're a good man.
And we have another hand.
Thank you.
Don Salverda. Don.
Right, right, Terry and Mark. First of all, this is audio. I don't have a computer right in front of me. But Mark, thank you very, very much for not only your kind words for me, but the tremendous presentation you made. Very inspiring. The one step, everybody will remember that. It was a great message, and I have certainly valued our relationship some 30 plus years ago. I kind of hate to think of how fast the years go by, but you did just a great job. Thank you for accommodating us. And also thank you to Jim Nucky and Mary Jo for the kind remarks.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Don.
All right. Well, Terry, are we good?
I think we're great. Thank you much, Mark. It was wonderful. Thank you to all who stayed and listened and have this great opportunity. Please remember, for the members, we have leadership lessons learned in about 35 minutes. That'll come up. But thank you so much, and take care. Have a great month. We'll see you next month. Thank you, Mark.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Terry.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone. Good to see you all.